the words were more important than anything that I was saying. I think more or less these are just kind of depictions of what I was talking to. But the idea, again, is to have that configure price quote solution on one platform, gaining visibility across the board. And this is another great idea, and start to really broaden the horizons of where this plays on the platform, is by having CPQ live within our ecosystem here. You're then opening up the possibilities of plugging in the vast amount of extended tools on our App Exchange, whether or not it's kind of visualization tools to start bringing in maybe 3D components, enhanced document generation tools to streamline that process. E-signature, I'm not sure if you're leveraging anything like DocuSign, EchoSign, or anything like that, but again, I think the overarching theme here is there are endless possibilities to continue to plug solutions into Salesforce that will directly integrate with the platform, and where you're able to use that sales information, that quoting information, to then kind of move your customers along the sales cycle even quicker. And by the idea behind that is by having your customer go from lead all the way to an order or a contract being generated, then it's just a matter of sending that information downstream to your ERP as your general ledger for fulfillment and what have you. But that's not always the case. Not all of our customers have the luxury of having this set up perfectly. And this is where we really start to see, where our conversations begin, and where I come into the conversation is our customers are doing things inside of Salesforce. They might be doing a great job at capturing lead information, generating a sales opportunity, but more often than not, they are leaving the platform to create their quotes and their contracts in a third-party system, whether it's Excel, Word, a homegrown quoting or ERP solution. And that's causing a major disconnect between what's in Salesforce and then what's outside of Salesforce in those quotes and contracts. Their opportunities aren't always in sync with what the customer is actually seeing from a contract standpoint. There might be a lot of errors there, or fat fingering, or sometimes just double entry that's taking up a lot of time and taking a salesperson away from their day-to-day task, which is to help customers, get them contracts, and get deals done. And naturally, with this giant fissure between Salesforce and the ERP, it creates a lot of disconnect, a lot of extra work, oftentimes teams of people having to just put that information back in both places. And with that, we're really seeing productivity start to fall apart. And again, I'll talk about those manual practices, the inaccurate quotes due to lack of constraints and visibility and rules that allow them to get the right job done, which is really creating those broken relationships. You're missing opportunities for cross-sell, upsell. Customers don't have a good idea of what customer has what. So at any given time when someone calls in, they're having to either ask them a question of, hey, what are we talking about, what product, rather than just looking at their account, seeing what they already own, and moving from there. Any questions here on this particular slide? I know we got off to a little bit of a slower start, so I want to make sure that we're flying through these so we can get to the fun demo part, but want to make sure that there's nothing you're hearing or seeing that doesn't make sense. Perfect. I'll take silence as all good. So, and with that, so as we see those kind of broken relationships and that fragmented technology that really slows reps down, these are really some of the overarching themes that we find our customers strive towards that help them create the best customer experience. And ultimately, having a tool like this on the platform allows them to be much more productive, offer a much better customer experience. It really mitigates risk of having errors between, moving to another solution and having to put re-entry into many different platforms. And it also creates automation, taking extra steps out of the picture by creating rules and some automation and workflow that'll get the job done for them. And then, of course, the visibility, being it the executive management or just sales managers or any sales or service rep that wants to get a good look at the customer base, they have that within the tool by having all of these tools there. A couple more just to give you a good overarching understanding of what we're going to be going through. So Tyler's going to be taking us through a demonstration. And these are some of the high-level things that I want you to keep your eye out for. And the idea is to where we'll take a rep through, We'll give them a presented solution and presented screen, which we call guided selling. Think of this as a way for them to filter down the right product for the right application. Whether you have a different product set for different industries, such as healthcare, commercial, government, what have you, you're able to start making those selections just the way you might filter down your results in Amazon. So you're only presenting the right product for the right situation to the sales rep. And from there, we put in some rules and product constraints so that when we're going through and configuring a particular solution, that by the end of that, it is commercially and technically valid, and that you're comfortable sending that proposal and delivering on that product for your customer. And then we'll get into more of the complex pricing to where you can either have contracted pricing for your customer, things like volume discounts, floors or ceilings to margin control or discount control, and then bringing that all the way to the quote generation to where they're able to quickly and accurately get a proposal that your marketing team approves out to your customer in a timely manner. Perfect. As I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, this isn't going to be your exact products and pricing, and there's a reason for that. We span many different industries, which I'll show on kind of this NASCAR slide here. We're all over the map, and this solution can be molded in a multitude of different ways to make sure that whatever you're looking for and whatever you're needing out of the solution, it's something that we can deliver on. So we welcome questions throughout. I'm sure there will be some, as this is not going to be exactly ProMach or ID technology products. But again, the idea here is to pay attention to the rules and the technology and the flexibility that's in place to make sure that we can deliver on the solution that you need. Any questions there? I think this is a good pausing point. We're almost 20 minutes in. I want to leave an ample amount of time for the demonstration. It sounds like a couple people have to leave by 11. Any questions that I can go over for you before we get started?
We're ready for demo.
Cool. So I don't know if whoever has control wants to pass it to Tyler.
I have to rejoin, guys. Just give me 1 second. I was on my cell phone. Nope. Sorry. 1 second.
Tyler, I just made you the presenter.
I'm rejoining the meeting actually, so I'll ask you to do that again in just 1 second. Okay. I'm back in now, so I see I'm in there twice. All right, yep, you got the right one. All right, can you guys now see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. If I go full screen like this, can you still see my screen? All right.
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. So, yes, so before I hop into the actual clicks, Jordan kind of set it up, but in terms of, today I'll be playing the role of a sales rep. The company that we work for sells different heavy machinery. And so, as Jordan said, you're going to see as I go through a quote, the system's going to guide me to help me find the select product because we sell a pretty massive catalog in this case. Then I'll be taken through the configuration of that step by step to make sure that I'm building all the right, or putting all the right pieces together of this machine. And then finally, we'll start to price it out, generate a nice document for my customer, and then close the deal. And so, as you can see, here I'm within Salesforce on my account, Harvey Machinery Corp. And if we take a look, let me refresh this quickly. If we take a look at the details of this account, it's about what you would expect. I have some phone numbers, I have some addresses, but this is actually a brand new account for me in my patch. And so if we go ahead and look at everything else related to this account, you'll see that there's nothing else there, right? I have that one contact, Foghorn, that I've been working with. And I actually just got off the phone with Foghorn, and they want to see a proposal for an excavator, or a skid steer, excuse me. So what I'm going to do is make a new opportunity. I'll call this my skid steer op. I'm going to say that I'm going to close it by the end of May, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a stage. So really just some very basic information. With that, I'm going to save. You'll notice that at this time, I've left the amount of this opportunity blank. You can see that here. Now, I did that on purpose, right? It might be practice where a sales rep might guess at what this opportunity is worth. But what we're going to do with a tool like CPQ is when we make a new quote from this opportunity, we have the chance to mark one of these quotes as primary. And what the primary quote is going to do is sync its information back to the opportunity. With things like what products are we selling, what the amount of this is worth, discounting, and really anything else that you might want to report on. And where this also comes into play is we can now start to have multiple quotes on one opportunity, but we're only going to forecast that one that's marked as primary. So maybe we want to show a couple different machines, a couple different accessories with those machines, different price points. We can quote all of those different scenarios now to our customer, but only forecast that one that we think has the best chance to close. And so I'm going to go ahead and just fill in who my contact is so they can receive this document. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to go ahead and put a start date for June 1st. We could think of that as maybe what our expected ship date is in this case. And I'll go ahead and save. So again, really just some high level information to go ahead and get this quote kicked off. Now that I've done that, I can begin to add products to this quote. But any questions thus far?
How does this compare to the current flow that is in place today when you're kind of creating an opportunity and then moving to a quote?
Looks very similar so far.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and begin the product selection process then. And what you're going to see is that I'm taken straight into what we call guided selling. What guided selling is going to do, it's going to ask me a series of questions related to our business, some pretty high level questions. And as I start to answer these questions, the system's then going to start to filter down our product catalog to help me find the correct solution for my customer. And so we're going to start with the first question here. Am I looking for heavy equipment or materials today? If I select heavy equipment, then you'll notice that I get a subset of questions that are populated here that can just continue to help guide me to the correct solution. So if I look in equipment type, can you guys see this pick list here on your screen, by the way? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Question?
I was having an issue with the pick list not showing up last week, but with the equipment type, so right, here's all the different heavy equipment that we sell. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick excavators, and when I pick excavators, you'll see that I get another additional question that appeared. But I don't actually have to answer that if I don't want to. In this case, I'm just going to suggest, and what you're going to see is here's all the different all the different excavators that we can sell. I'm going to go ahead and switch.
I noticed, may I ask a question? You have pictures here of 3 different types of excavators. That stock within CPQ?
Yeah, absolutely. You can add an image to, whatever product that you want.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And this time I'm going to go ahead and say I want a skid steer and I want it for landscaping work. And when I hit suggest this time, here's a subset of the different skid steers that we sell. Again, right, I could have continued to answer some of these other questions to help me, might get me down to just one singular product. But in this case, I'm okay to select that for 26 and select. And when I select that product, I'm now taken into the configuration of that model, where now I'll be making the different choices around how we're going to build this, if we want any attachments, and any warranties, and any other add-ons to that. Now, before I start going through this, just want to stop again. Any questions about product selection?
How would you go backwards from here if you want to change your selection?
Yeah, so
Navigation to that?
like if I selected the wrong item,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would be able to press cancel and just add products again.
All right, so you can't just take one step back. You have to kind of kill it and start over. You've answered a series of questions if you want to change just one answer.
Yeah, so I mean, typically what's going to happen is that it's going to hold those. There's actually a setting where you can tell the quote to hold those answers for you. We actually had it turned off in this case. That's why I had to select it again. But typically when I come back in here on the same quote, it would have all of those same answers already living there, that I could just change one. And maybe if I wanted to just slightly have a different model, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and another thing I want to point out is, let me move this bar. We also have the idea of this global search up at the top too. So let me actually just clear this out. And you'll see here's our whole product catalog. Now with this global search bar across the top, I could type in any information I know about the product I'm looking for. It will search across all fields or all data types that live on that product record. So maybe I only know something from the description. Maybe I only know some attribute of this product. I could search for that. I'm just going to do skid because I know that there's a lot of these. But what you're going to see is as I start to type, the system's going to start thinking ahead about what I might be looking for. So here's my actual models, but you can see there's also a dirt bucket that connects to skid steers. It's part of the description, so it's finding that as well.
Yeah, and the idea here is, sometimes guided selling, maybe for some of your more experienced reps, might look as just an extra added step that they don't necessarily want to do. So we do have that ability for the global search, or you can even filter down exactly by, product code or SKU or anything like that to help speed up the process. But the idea behind that is we have customers with very vast product books and newer reps who sometimes like that hand holding to where they can answer a series of questions, present the right product. So that's kind of the purpose there. But again, it can be by user how you want them to interact with the tool.
Awesome. So now that we're in the configuration, you're going to see that we have tabs across the top, letting me know exactly what I'll be selecting in each one of those tabs. So first, I have just some choices about how to build out the actual skid steer itself. And then within that tab, you'll see I have some features that are segmented out. And so first, I'm going to be selecting my cabin options. Now, what you're going to see here, if we take a look at these first two items, I have a cab enclosure with sound and heat. My second choice is just a sound reduction option. So we can kind of tell by the names there, right? Like it wouldn't make much sense for me to select both of those at the same time because that top part comes with the sound reduction. And so if I select the cab enclosure, it actually turns off my ability to select the sound reduction option. I already have it. We want to make sure I'm not selling the same thing twice. That kind of works as a two-way street as well, you'll see. And then if we move into the tire options, now in this case, you'll notice that we have a radio button rather than a checkbox, simply letting me know that I can only select one of these choices here. I can and so in this case, I'll actually go ahead and select those heavy duty tires, and we'll move on to our attachments. Now, as I select the bucket for this skid steer, you'll see I have a few different choices in the application of the bucket. And as I start to select one of these attributes here, so let's say I want dirt loading purposes, it's actually going to then reveal to me all of our buckets that are designed for dirt loading. Now, in this case, I was using an attribute to drive that showing of those products. That could also be done by selecting other products as well, right? So if you have a case where I select product A, and that's going to reveal to me all of the accessories that can be selected that go with that, it would work the exact same way. But let's say I needed trenching instead. As I switch to trenching, you'll notice here's 3 different buckets, different pictures, and I'm going to go ahead and say we need that 16-inch bucket.
Are there a lot of configuration rules present in your day-to-day today? When you're going through and selecting options for a product, does this resonate?
Hey, John, why don't you comment on that?
Yeah, so what we do is we'll have a base model, base unit, and there are probably 12 tabs. Right now there are tabs where you're just picking a screen. So we would have the base tab, and then we would pick print engine. We put different applicators. So basically there's about 8 different tabs just to build the print and apply machine, and then you go into I/O connections, you go into software, you go into any type of accessories. And then if we wanted to build more of a system, let's say I wanted to add a conveyor so that it's just going to be a turnkey system, I want to add photo eyes or any types of things that would be a line accessory, so we would add all of those things. So we kind of build the system as we go.
And
yeah,
this is Rachel. I have a question. So I'm looking at a screen that has 3 different buckets. It has product code, which looks like a SKU number, a product name, and a description, and a price. So where is this information coming from? Is this information something that you're going into the back of Salesforce configurator and maintaining, or do you have a live link to an ERP system where these items are maintained?
Yeah, it's quite honestly, it's both, right? We have product records here within Salesforce, which in this case is going to hold the things like the code, the name, the description. I mean, even the price, the cost, right? All of this information is in Salesforce. But what we see very, very commonly is that customers will still use the ERP as their product master, and have a sync set up with Salesforce. So if the price changes, if the name or the code or anything changes in the ERP, that's going to sync up to Salesforce and make sure that those product records are up to date as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so Rachel, what Brett and I are thinking.
I just have one quick follow-up question. So what I heard you say was I would enter it in Salesforce and then I could establish a sync. But am I correct in understanding that if it didn't exist in Salesforce, I would first have to create it in order for it to sync? It's not like I could, based on some criteria, push it to Salesforce from the ERP. It first has to be entered in Salesforce, and then using the item number or whatever unique ID, then I can establish that link. Am I correct in my understanding, or can it be pushed? Can the item itself be created that way?
Are you talking about just like a data load in there instead of having to put these into Salesforce first? Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding exactly.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And you answered my question to the extent with that question, you answered my question. So I'm good now. We can keep going.
This is really from Relation Edge. I just wanted to clarify that there's you could have the integration set up such that if, for instance, a new product gets created in the ERP, it would automatically push into Salesforce to be available here for configuration in CPQ. You wouldn't have to do anything manually, whether a data load or manually configuring it into Salesforce UI. We could set it up so that it just pushes. That's awesome.
Okay.
So and Jeff, have you seen, or I guess Salesforce, have you seen that product code where that could be a bill of materials, and as that's selected, once we get the order, we can push that back to the ERP and do an auto release?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so we'll actually hit on that a little bit today. But essentially, once a quote gets accepted, and again, right, we'll have to hash out some of these details as well for exactly how it will work for you guys. But typically the way that we've seen it is that once a quote gets accepted, it becomes an order within Salesforce. And then that order will then get sent to the ERP. And now in terms of like a bill of materials, there's a couple of different ways to do that. You can, I would say one common approach we see is that you might do something like what we're doing here within Salesforce, where you're configuring the machine. And then when you send it to the ERP will hold all the information for the bill of materials, depending on what quote line Salesforce sends over. Or you could have it so that the bill of material lives within Salesforce as well. But essentially the answer to that is yes. Once this quote gets accepted, it will turn out to be a bill of materials.
Great. And John, any other questions or comments on the actual configuration? You see we have, several different tabs above the top, and then there's several different, features under each tab. So I think you were kind of alluding to that there are quite a few that you have in your day-to-day. And I think in the same way we can do that, you could either have one tab with many different features or break them up into multiple tabs with a few each. But I think the overall idea is very similar to what you experience in your, the configurator you're using today. And this kind of gives it a nice clean way of going through step by step.
Yeah. To Jordan's point, we could take these 5 tabs and turn them into 20 tabs if we want. I think the purpose of this demo is to just show you some functionality. But knowing that, we might be doing that over and over again.
Right. So
one more question regarding the config.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, yeah. I just want to know how configurable the display is that we're looking at right now. Can we change the layout, or is it kind of fit into a template?
Yep. A majority of what we're looking at would be up to you how it looks. All of these columns would be up to you, what information is displayed there. One thing that we're not actually showing you here is one thing that is not here is that we could actually even put like a drop-down menu next to each item, so that if you want to display more information that's not maybe fit into a column, you could actually start to display information in like a little drop-down menu. All of these tabs, the way these tabs appear would be up to you. The name of these features would be completely up to you. So it is pretty flexible. Anything else? Awesome. So I'm going to move on then to the safety component here. And this is essentially, you can think of this as more of just add-ons, right? We're selling a skid steer. We know that people who use skid steers probably need some hard hats and some orange vests. So we're going to offer to sell those as well. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and grab some safety glasses and a safety vest and move on from there. In this case, I could have just gone ahead and selected any of these that I wanted. But the idea here is that, right, I mean, essentially what we're doing is creating relationships between these products. So, now we can take those add-ons and start to put these in front of the sales rep's face so that they can then have that conversation with their customers as well.
In the context of this tab, what does the custom product checkbox imply?
Yep.
What does that really do?
Yeah, so it could mean a few things. In this case specifically, what it means is that it's actually kind of referring to that red text right next to it. Is that it's going to be something that we end up doing a design for. And so what that means is that we're going to need an engineer to get involved into this deal. And so that checkbox essentially in terms of the rules is going to ping an engineer essentially and tell them that they have to get involved in this.
Yeah, and this is where,
writing workflow before the guy can finish the quotation or after the guy can finish the quotation? Can you produce, and I guess, perhaps maybe, can you drive workflow so that a guy can actually produce a quotation, and can you drive other kinds of workflow so that the guy can't produce a quotation until someone has been involved? Can you do both kinds?
Yes and yes. So it's actually, this is, totally up to you by design. So it really depends on whether or not you want to be able to maybe give kind of an estimated price. But what's happening here is once we select this custom product, like Tyler said, it's going to be kicked off to an engineer, and that's where we start to incorporate things like approvals. So the only thing that might be able to go to a customer may be a draft before it actually gets approved and worked on by the appropriate people. And this is something that you can determine how you want it exactly to work, but what we're showing is the presentation of rules and how you can maybe have someone else give, again, their stamp of approval, their 2 cents on the quote before it's delivered to the customer in a final executable format.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that's just, it's just another benefit of being on Salesforce is that all of these records are very collaborative. So at whatever point in the process we want that engineer to get involved, they can. I would say, you know, we don't always necessarily want to stop somebody from sending out a document to our customer. We want them to continue that conversation. But to Jordan's point, right, we'll put like a draft watermark on there. But that's going to be completely up to you guys as well. So
Brett, sorry, real quick question. So Brett and Rachel, can I ask a question? Sorry. Brett and I are sitting here. So let's say that I've got a new sales guy and I want to make sure that John reviews all of his quotes before they go out. So we can, in that workflow, we could, if we know that a guy's new and we don't want him necessarily configuring without a check, we could say direct, it's got to be, workflow's got to go director of sales for approval before it can go.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely can. But I would argue that the ideal way that this would be configured is to where, you know, by the end of him configuring a solution, that it's going to be as accurate as possible for that right scenario. And if he's following through the business rules that are presented to him, but yes, to your point, sure. But we would like to even give you better than that by where you're confident that even a new person can configure our right solution. The same way that you and I can go on and configure a car online, we're going to know that that manufacturer is going to be able to deliver on that vehicle because they've already set up those rules and those product constraints for me.
Got it.
Yep. Exactly. And, you know, we'll hit on the approvals piece once we kind of get through this and the pricing. You'll see that we can build out some pretty advanced approval logic with CPQ. So if you do want to have that idea of, you know, this is a newer rep and they need to go through maybe a tighter approval chain, we can absolutely set that up, and we'll talk about that when we get there. One other thing I wanted to point out about this custom product is that I was able to actually leave some notes for the engineer. This could end up being customer facing as well if we want it to be. It's simply now just data that lives on that quote line. So if we want to present that to the customer, we can, or we could use it as more of internal notes for the engineer. In this case, they need a horse trailer, so that's what I wrote there. And finally, we have some warranties as well. And in this case, you'll see, similar to how we were showing you with the buckets, now I can start to use attributes to help do some of this selection for me. Whereas if I change from standard to extended, it actually changed what my product was, and I could go from one or 3 years as well. In this case, you're going to notice that it's actually required that I include a warranty. So that's going to be hard checked for me, and I have no option of unchecking that. So I'm happy with this configuration. Any questions before I save and move on to the pricing piece? Alrighty, awesome. So we'll go ahead and save that. As I save that, the system is doing one last check to make sure everything is accurate. We saw that it was giving me some feedback in real time about certain things I can select or not select. But now that I have a technically valid skid steer that we know that we can actually build, now we can begin to actually price out the solution. Alrighty. So a few things to point out here. What you're going to see here is that in this case, we're pricing everything at list, which I believe is how you guys do it as well. We do have the option actually of switching to a cost-based model if we want to do some markup then on what the cost of the product is. And we could actually do both within the same quote if we want to as well. What I'm going to do here is I am going to drop down this list here to show you that this is kind of what I was hitting on the last page within configuration, is that not only do you have the ability to tailor what these columns look like for your sales reps, but we can use these drop downs to hold additional information as well. So we don't have like an endless scroll of columns. But what we're seeing in this case is we can see what the cost of this item is, and we can see what the list price of it is. We can see what our margin is. And then we get some insight into what approvals we're going to have to get here as well.
Can I ask a question? Of
course. Always.
I'm sure this is a matter of just setup, but could I have a cost where you have quantity, unit price? Could I actually have a cost by item?
Like per quote liner, or like each item on the quote, you mean has a cost?
Yes, where you have 8 items there. Can I have okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would say, I was just showing you one of those items. If I opened all of them all at once, you could see that each individual item has its own cost here. And so then we could report on the margin of each item. And then ultimately, of course, we could start to report on the margin of the quote as a whole as well.
Yeah,
Agreed.
and I will say,
you have to click on each one of those arrows, which means that's more time salespeople spend clicking versus seeing what they want. Can I bring over the cost in a column so I could see it in the summary view?
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you want to put cost as one of these columns, you can absolutely do that. We were just trying to, keep our landscape clean here. But in addition to those drop downs, which, maybe you don't want to click that for each item, here's just another example of how it can be flexible. And I could actually change my view of this screen to cost. And what that's going to do is actually change the columns on the fly that I'm looking at. And so now when I change it to the cost view, I could see the cost per item. And in this case, if I was pricing at cost, then I could apply a markup.
Yeah, and I'll say that, we show and we're presenting many different options here. By no means are we expecting a customer to have, the different quote line views, the drop downs and everything. It's kind of just here's the art of the possible with the solution. It's totally up to you by design how you actually want it to work. But I agree, there's no reason why a sales rep should have to open up each drawer to see that information. But know as well that all of this information is still being captured regardless, and you'll be having the reporting capabilities after the fact on whatever really you want.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that we can drill down when we need to drill down, and that the columns are configurable so that I can have on the screen in a summary view exactly what is the way the salesperson is going to walk through the quote from quantity, unit price, cost, and margin, right, net price. So
yeah,
great.
Yeah, you could have cost, price, margin, discount. You could have all of those. Whether or not some of that might.
Awesome. So let's get into some discounting practices. And so the first thing we're going to start with here is the idea of automated discounts. And in this case, the way I'm going to show you that is with what we call discount schedules. And so what this is going to be is the idea of quantity-based discounts or volume-based discounts. And if we look down here at our safety glasses and our safety vest, you'll notice that there's like a little billboard sign there with a dollar sign on it. And if I hover over that, what you're going to see is the way that these tiers work. So basically up to 12 glasses, I'm paying full price. But as I start to sell more glasses, then my customer is going to get an automatic discount applied. Same idea with the safety vest. The reason I'm showing you this one as well is because with this one, I could actually click the schedule and edit it. So if you wanted to use this as a negotiation tactic, you can do that as well. From there, we can start to do some of our own discretionary discounting. And so I'll show you a few different ways we can do that. The first is I can apply a discount to this quote as a whole with this additional discount field. So let's say I want to apply a 10% discount to the whole quote. I can do that here. Calculate, and you'll see a discount applied across the board. Actually, one thing to point out is that not every single product got a discount. The two that didn't are going to be the trailer and the warranty. Because for both of those products, we said sales reps are not allowed to enter their own discounts for those. Maybe we want to protect margin. Maybe we don't ever want to, another one might be like labor rates. You never really want to discount your own labor. Things like that, we can lock the discounting on those.
Yeah, could we set a bottom line GP? Let's say that, you could discount up to and then set it and said, okay, well, anything more than 30%, less than 30% margin has to be approved.
Yep, exactly. And so that's actually what we're about to see here is, I don't necessarily have to go through this, but you'll see that we have these three fields here for equipment discount, accessory discount, and parts discount. Basically, the idea there is I don't necessarily have to apply that discount to the whole quote. I can start to do it like per product family if I want to as well.
Is there something that indicates which category these components fall into?
That would, again, just be kind of practice of adding maybe a column or maybe putting a field into here. But essentially, I think it's just looking at the product family of these products, which is a data point that lives there. I just don't think we exposed it here.
Okay.
But the other thing I want to show you is the target customer amount. And what this is let's say our customer comes to us and they tell us that they have a specific budget that they definitely can't go over that no matter what. Well, in this case, I could actually type that into that field there and let the system do the discounting calculations for me. So let's say in this case, with the way that it's configured right now, it's just about 47,000. Let's say my customer said they can't go over 42. I can type that in. And what you see is that now my quote total is 42. And the way that it's done the discounting here, if I switch these two percentages, is that it's going to do what I call peanut butter spread those discounts across all of these items. So it's giving the same discount across the board in order to hit that amount, while still keeping any of those discounting rules in place around products that can't be discounted, for example. Or if you have like floors, we'll take that into account as well. But finally, so that was all like quote level discounting. We also, of course, then have the ability to do line level discounting. So I can click into, say, my cab enclosure, and I could say, actually, let me drop this down to show you how this is going to work with this approval here as well. So I could start off by saying I want a 15% discount on that specific line item. Here you'll see, okay, it applied that discount. There's my margin that we're receiving, and that's a pretty healthy margin. So my approval is okay. Let's say I get a little crazy, and I go with that 95% discount. Well, all of a sudden my margin is a negative 300%, and that's definitely going to be a red flag, as you can see here. So in real time, this isn't sending out approvals yet. It's just me as a rep modeling out my deal. But you can see in real time, I'm going to get that feedback about what's going to happen if I try to get this out the door. And so, right, that red flag, that's obviously not something I want to see. So I'm going to drop this down to something like a 40% discount, and I'm okay with that. Let me try to show you that there is a middle ground somewhere along the way here, where once I hit 50% margin, it's still pretty healthy, but we're going to have a manager look at that. So it's not quite that red flag yet, but it is turning yellow. And I am actually going to kick that back up just because I do want to show some approvals. So let me go back up to like 80%. Oh. There we go. Any questions about that? Does that make sense for anyone? Now, one thing I do want to add is that in this case, it's looking at the margin for the approval. But it could really be looking at any data there. If you want to look at what the actual just discount amount is, or anything like that, you can do that as well. Does that make sense for everybody?
It makes sense, but I'm surprised that you don't bring over without doing a deeper dive, because I can discount off of the line item without doing expanding the drawer, I can, like, I'm surprised there's no place for a pop-up with the little triangle to be on the line item itself.
Yeah, so the drawer, a lot of our customers aren't even leveraging the drawer. So I wouldn't get distracted with that. It's just kind of, we're showing the flexibility there, but there's no real need to open up a drawer or necessarily even have it. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, we commonly put the little flag icon in the columns here, so you can see it right in line without having to open the drawer.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that's typically how we show it as well. It's just that with this manufacturing, there's a lot of data points that we're trying to point out along the way. So we're just trying to keep our screen clean here. But to your point, we typically put that flag right in line. And in fact, I just pulled up a different org that we show customers to show you that is actually how we typically show it right there. There's my approval right next to my discount amount.
Yeah.
Can I answer your question, John?
Yeah.
Yes, and I also see what you mean about it looking very busy.
So I know you guys are going to present a lot, and Brett and I, this is Doug, and Brett and I've got to step off. And I guess, Jeff, you've done these implementations before, right?
They have. I'll answer for him.
Okay. So the application that we're that's okay. So the application we're looking at today, and Jeff, you're kind of familiar with our organization, and I'm not going to hold you to a number, but what in ballpark numbers, rough ballpark numbers, what is the cost to implement this? Understanding that we've got the license, but what is the cost for getting the screen set up, all the data in, and getting it functioning? Just a ballpark number.
Can I go back to what I told you before? More than $1, less than $1 million?
No. I'm just looking at Ray, and the reason why I'm asking is I'm spending a ton of money at one of my divisions on Infor that I've told them to freeze. And what I'm seeing on this screen meets Brett and I are sitting here, we're in violent agreement that what we're seeing here will fit every one of our businesses. I'm just trying to get an idea of order of magnitude, because I spent $140,000 in California and I'm not finished yet.
So I'll tell you what, why don't, instead of me putting words into Charlie's mouth, I know Charlie's on the phone, I will circle back immediately after this call, Charlie and I will, and send you an email on that to give you kind of an idea.
Yeah, I just would like to understand it, because to me, what Brett and I have been talking on mute while you guys have been going on, the things that John's asking, it sounds like you guys can configure this to do just about the look and the feel and the drop downs, very customizable.
Exactly.
Being able to put item numbers that tie into the information that's in Infor and Sightline should allow us to push information both ways, update costs on a regular basis so that we know we're quoting accurate margins, and then pushing downstream when we get the order to be able to do some automated releases to engineering and other things. So, Brett, you have any questions before we drop off? Is there anything else really important you guys wanted to show us before we exit out, or not?
So this is Tom. I'll add to what Doug said for the the follow-up conversations that we're going to have, Jeff and whoever else will be involved. There's the hard dollar cost. We're also interested in the duration. What's the implementation duration, and some case studies. There's lots of people who use this. Look at organizations who are similar to us who have done it, and we want to understand their experience, how much it cost, how long it took, and what's the ongoing internal overhead required to maintain it and support it.
Yeah. So
I agree, Jeff. That could be the follow-up. But Tom, I'm telling you, looking at this, this is going to be a heck of a lot easier to maintain than the Infor product. That's Brett and I. I'm speaking for Brett, but Brett's sitting here nodding his head violently. We want to understand the cost, what it would take to implement all the things Tom said, So Jeff, if you could follow up with that, I think that'd be great. And I think we should do in parallel to that ProMach team, I think we should look at what Rachel's got great resources at ID, so they're not spending as, I don't know, Rachel, what the total spend was to get your configure up and going, but we should compare that. Jeff, if you've got a good idea of what ID has currently, it'd be interesting to, you're going to have to quote that anyway, because that's going to be in one DC. So.
Mine, we wrote all of our own rule sets. We had Jeff Pierce train us, but we weren't paying him he wasn't on our payroll constantly trying to write our rule sets. That's the reason you're experiencing what you're experiencing then for. I think you and I talked about this.
I agree. You had your own internal costs though. You had somebody, you've had somebody on payroll doing this. So there is a cost associated with it.
5 people on payroll. Actually, we had 10 in our project team. And then we have at least 2 to 5 people ongoing, always living, breathing CPQ, part and full time. So it's an investment for us. So I can't judge from this and whether it's more or less complex than the Infor piece. What I want to see is, we saw a beautiful piece like this for Infor also. What I want to see is under the hood. What does it take to write these rules? Because we've got some complex needs, and I know everybody else is going to have them too. And, maintenance, this is not maintenance. I want to see what the maintenance looks like.
Yeah, and that's a really good question.
That's going to help you judge whether or not it's going to cost you more or less, or it's more complicated or less complicated than Infor.
Yeah, and honestly, that's something that we always like to show you, because that's something that we're very proud of, is how easy it is to maintain this as well. And so at some point, we definitely would like to show you how that looks on the back end as well.
Are you guys going to do that on this call, or are you going to do that? Does that need to be a separate meeting?
We've got more time. You guys tell us.
I mean, we still have an hour on the calendar. I probably can. I would like to finish up this deal cycle just to show you how it wraps up, but it's really just an approval on a document at that point. So it's really up to you guys.
Yeah, I think let's close out the hypothetical sales scenario, just in case, who knows, there might be a future question about it after the fact, and we might be able to cover it now. But let's absolutely hop into a little bit of the back end to show you. And I think that's a really great question, and honestly, one of our biggest differentiators of the Salesforce platform versus other solutions is it's meant to be maintained in house. So we'll continue with the route that we have right now.
Is that work for everybody else as well?
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect. Cool. Then let's hop back into it and let's get to that admin piece. So I added that discount. Honestly, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just save this quote. Now that I've saved this and I return back to my quote where we started, what you're going to notice is that now I have a nice deal desk section where I can start to analyze financially what's going on with this deal on a holistic level. Now, because this is Salesforce, something to keep in mind is that these fields can be restricted to only certain people if you want. Like, for example, maybe you only want managers to see some of this information and not the actual reps themselves. That's completely fine. But again, you can see now we look at our margin, we can break down the different categories where the revenue is coming from. We could even start to visualize it right here within this record. And so the next step would then be, let's do approvals next, and then we'll do the document. And so you could actually see right here in my approval section that I actually am going to have to go for 4 different people for approval. I have a manager and a VP. Those are both going to be on the pricing side because of that hefty discount. I have an engineer because of that trailer. And I have inventory, which we didn't really talk about, but one of my items was actually low in stock, so we just need to make sure that we can deliver on it. And so we can see, okay, so I need to get 4 approvals. Well, with the application here, the first thing I can do is actually preview that approval. And what this is going to do is visualize what my approvals are going to look like before I send them out the door. And what we're able to do with what we call our advanced approvals is parallel approval chains. And what that means is that when I submit this for approval, instead of the typical linear approach to approvals where it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, it's actually going to send out 3 separate chains that all need to be satisfied to get this quote approved, but they're not going to hold each other up time-wise. So let's say Isaac inventory needs to, walk to the warehouse, maybe search for a part, whatever the situation might be. That's not going to stop Mina, Victor, or Earl from doing their approval. And so I'll go ahead, I'll submit this for approval. And what happened right there is, let me give this a quick refresh. Those 3 people that were all on the same level. Let's actually just go into this. You'll see that those first 3 people have a status of requested, which means that that's an active approval in their queue. But not only that, but the VP also has an approval made with an assigned status. And what that means is that VP could actually start to look into this deal now, so that by the time it actually gets onto their desk, they're already ready to make a decision. They don't have to now do the research about what's going on here, because they've already been looking into it. Of course, there would be emails that go out at this time now. There would be, if you use the Salesforce mobile app, they would get push notifications to their phone. And like you would expect out of Salesforce approvals, we could then just simply reply to that email with something like approved and have that feed the system. All of that typical approval stuff that you would expect.
Any questions or comments on approvals? Great. Awesome. So then let's take a quick look at the doc. Now, before I generate that, just want to show you, we have a section here called document output. And essentially what we're doing here is giving the sales rep some levers to pull to decide how this document should look and feel. Now, keep in mind that this is a template that lives in the system. So no matter which of these levers I decide to pull, I can't ever generate a document that is maybe something that the company doesn't want going out, because we're designing what all these rules are, right? So we know no matter what I do here, we're happy with what it looks like. But just to show you some of the choices we have, right? Like here's an example, print discounts. Do I want to show my discounts in this document or not? Well, I'm giving them an 81% discount on that one line item. So I'm pretty happy showing them that they're getting that. But if I'm not applying any discounts at all, I probably don't want to call them of all zeros there, right? That's going to be a awkward conversation that we have to have later then. So in that case, we could just hide the discount column altogether. Another example would be this introduction that my company was nice enough to pre-populate for me. But, this is one of my big bets for the year. I just had a great dinner with Foghorn last night. So I'm just going to simply add great steak last night. And now just by typing in those 4 words, it's going to feel like to Foghorn that I spent a lot of time putting this document together for them. One other piece I want to show you before we actually show the document is this sales contract section here. And so what we've done in this case is we've taken those terms that we most commonly negotiate. Let's use payment terms as our example here. And we've standardized that. And what we've done is we've turned it into a field where all the values that live here are going to be values that as a company, we know we're willing to do. We've done them in the past. We'll likely do it again if the situation's right. So in this case, Foghorn asked for a net 60. So as a sales rep, I can go ahead and put in net 60 there. Now, what this is going to do is, it's going to make it reportable now because it's a field that lives on the quote. Now we can start to report on how many times did we do net 60 and why, and we can start to figure out when it happens. It can also kick off an approval chain, just like we saw I had 3 chains. Now maybe I have 4, and it has to go to legal as well to approve. But also, what this is going to allow us to do is avoid some redlining as well.
So instead of having to, have our lawyer go into the document and change a 3 to a 6, which, that could take time, we could simply just call this field once it's been approved, and all of the language in the document will automatically be correct for us. Any questions about the output or the contract section here?
Is there any way for the terms to be linked to the ERP system to pull the specific terms that's been approved by accounting for the specific customer?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely mirror those over. I think what you'll see as you potentially make a decision one way or the other is our DocGen engine is really what's driving a lot of those terms that are being brought into that document. And those are based off of like either the product records or specific fields that are selected. So I think short answer, there's a few different ways to do it, but absolutely you don't need to retrace all of your steps to get specific terms in there that might already exist somewhere.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. I would say it's kind of similar to what we were talking about with the products, where if you have terms that live in your ERP today that you've used previously, you want to use them again, that's fine. I would say what we would probably do in that case is maybe sync them to the actual account record itself. So that way from the account level, we could see what terms they've agreed to. And then like we were talking about before, right, we could have like a sync in place where if this changes in the ERP, change it in the Salesforce. But then ultimately when we generate this document, we can start to pull from those customer terms as well.
Right. So question. So let's say P&G, we've negotiated 90 days across all of ProMach, and that's what it is. For that, if we had that at the account record when you went to create the quote, you could build a configuration tool such that there wouldn't be an option to change the terms. It would just be 90.
Exactly. Yep. So exactly right. We could essentially have a rule that says if on the account level we have a payment term, set it to that on the quote and don't let them change it. All of the data, like we could use data from anywhere in the system. Here's a kind of high level example of that. If I look at the addresses here, right? You guys watch what I've been doing the whole time. I didn't have to type any of that out. We just pulled that in from the account level as well. So it could be very similar with that payment term.
Hey, Brett and Doug are going to drop off now. Thank you all for that demo. It looked great, and we'll circle back with our team later today.
Sounds good. Thanks for participating and feedback.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at that doc, and then we'll get into the admin part as promised. So I click generate document there on the quote. What you're going to see here is I have a few different templates that I can pick from, a proposal or an order. In this case, we're going to stick with the proposal. It's going to be it's going to be very pretty, a lot of images in there, kind of high level overview of some of the different things, whereas an order might just be a reduced version of that with maybe just line items or anything else. So we'll go ahead and stick with that proposal. In addition to that, because we're selling a skid steer, we actually have some marketing collateral, or actually in this case, it's more of a data sheet that now anytime we sell a skid steer, the system's going to offer us to attach this additional information to my document. In this case, it was optional, so I could move it over if I want. You can make that required if you want. But just another great way to get more information in front of your customers. Another common use case that we'll see there is maybe you, as a company, you're about to launch a new product or a new product line, and marketing has put together a little informational sheet about that. Well, what we've seen customers do is require that be attached to all of their quotes, maybe for the next few months, so that all of our customers start to see what we're about to release. But the benefit here is that no longer am I sending an email with 15, 20 different PDFs attached to it. I just have one document that has all the information that my customer needs. So we're going to take a look at this document. You'll see that I could send this with DocuSign if I want, or any e-signature tool that you might use. I could email it right from here as well. I'm simply going to save for now. That's going to create the record within the system here. Not only is it going to create it, but it's actually going to version it as well. So in this case, it's going to be version 1. But what that means is that now if the customer comes back, requests a discount, more of a discount, requests a different bucket or whatever the situation might be, now we're going to know exactly how this deal has progressed over time. And so that document is also going to be attached to both the quote and the opportunity. So easy to find it when I want to send it to my customer. Here's that record. Here's the version as mentioned. Here's the opportunity in the quote. But let's take a look at what it looks like. And so here's going to be my cover page. You can see here's some of those machines that we sell. You can already start to see some of that merging in effect, right? Here's the company I'm selling to. I never had to type that out. In fact, you guys, like I said, you've been watching what I've done. The only things I've typed out was that little part about the stake, and everything else is just pulling from data that we created as part of my normal quote creation process. You're also going to see that draft. Oh, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? What program are you producing this document in?
It's part of the CPQ package in this case. So I could hit on that a little bit during the admin session, but you'll design the pieces of this document here within the system. The way it works is like each part of this document is what's called content, and then using a template, we piece all the content together. So this piece right here might be called like a cover page, but then we can start to.
My question's really, are you forcing me to, now do I have another license for this and another license for that and another license for this, or is this part of CPQ?
Yeah, we've only showed one product today, and that's Salesforce CPQ.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we have control of the design and layout of templates, and we can have multiple templates.
Yeah, you have, exactly. It's extremely flexible, and you could have as many templates as you want. Now, what we've seen though is that, right, because a lot of times we see customers have, I mean, I've seen upwards of 30, 50 plus templates for all the different situations. Like, you know, you might have a document like East Coast customer with discount, East Coast customer without discount. What we've seen is that using some of those checkboxes that we showed you is that you could actually start to reduce the amount of templates that you have, because now you have toggles to do some of those things.
Right. We currently just have one template, and it's very dynamic, but there may be an occasion where multiple would be beneficial.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and all of this, the design of this is going to be extremely flexible, and we'll get to that in just a moment here. But as you can see here, there's a draft watermark as well. And you could use whatever draft watermark you want, by the way. But in this case, because I never got this quote approved, it's going to appear there. And it would actually automatically come off once that quote was approved. But as we continue down, here's my introduction. You can see where that little blurb about the stake made it in. Next, we'll get into the summary of what we're proposing to our customer today. In this case, we just give you a high-level overview per product family and what you're going to be paying per family. But as we get past that, now we get into the actual details of what you're going to be purchasing today. So again, all of this extremely flexible, up to you what you want to show in terms of the columns. In this case, I decided to print discounts, so you can see there's that 81% discount. And there's my quote total. Now, beneath this, and again, this is optional, but because I'm selling some of those items that have those volume-based pricing associated to them, we could even show you those tiers on the quote as well. That might start to drive customers to purchase more from us as they see that they're eligible for better prices. And then finally, we get into the terms and conditions here. So there is a terms library that is part of CPQ where you can then start to house those terms. As we talked about, you could even start to do customer-specific terms there. You can start to do product-specific terms, like any conditions that you guys can think of, you can put terms attached to that. But in this case, this is essentially just our standard language for the most part. And then as we get down, here's our signature block. But finally, here's going to be that data sheet that we decided to attach. So it was, it was an attachment to this quote, but as you can see, it's all seamlessly part of the same document. And now our customer knows the specs of the machine that they're getting. Any questions around that? Awesome. So we'd have just one last step, and then we're going to get to admin as promised. And so I'm going to go back to my opportunity level now. And what you can see is that now that I have that primary quote with products on it, you can see that my opportunity is now much more filled out. So there's all the products that I'm including as part of that primary quote. There's the amount of that primary quote and any other information that you might want to report upon. But the idea here is that anytime I go now adjust that primary quote, or I could even go and just make a new primary quote and start fresh. Whatever that primary quote is going to drive information on the opportunity. So we're going to go ahead and say we won this deal. Customer loved the skid steer that we designed for them. And now upon winning that deal, when we return to the account level, and right now we're kind of working our way back to where we started. Here's that, what initially was a very blank account, brand new account when I started this. Now I have that opportunity that we made together, and there's that quote. But in addition to that, it's also generated assets for us on the account level, so we could see everything our customers ever purchased from us. And it could even go as far as creating things like service contracts and entitlements for us. If we wanted to create sales contracts, if there's any type of subscription component to your business, we can create subscriptions as well, start to track the renewal of those. But the idea here is that just by closing out that opportunity, all of that information makes its way back to the account. So now just from the account level, I have full visibility into everything that's ever happened to this customer. But I think that's where we can end the demo for today to leave the last bit to get into the back end, but would love to open it up to conversation again and see if any feedback or questions.
Okay, so we're good now at this point. It's quite flexible, the tool. And it gives us, it looks like it would give us the same thing we have now on the output side. And
there's actually a few little wins.
Yeah.
I have the biggest concerns I have are can you handle our rules set?
That's a good one. Yeah. So now we really do need to see the back end of this to see if everything we've done can we use. And did they share with you the sample rule sets like that?
Like the machine is actually really simple and perfectly well. It will handle Salesforce. I have no concerns. It's going to be able to handle the questions. The questions we ask on the machinery side are very simple. But the most complex rules that we have is the labels rule set. And if it can't hold labels, then we can't do what we need to do.
Right. It would be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did anybody share with you the sample rule set that we had?
It would have come from you, if anything, I think. I'm not positive. What does that document look like?
What I shared with them, John, was that quick one that you had put together that kind of walked through your process in a Word document.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think I shared with Kurt as well when I sent it to Jeff as well, is a snapshot, a screenshot, because it's screen after screen after screen of rule sets.
Yep.
Like what program are you doing the rule set in?
I'm sorry, was that a question for us?
I think he was asking Mike.
Oh.
What was that again? I'm sorry.
The program you were doing the rule set in?
Yeah, I did. I think I sent you the print and apply rule set.
Yes. The thing you sent me. And I thought you said it was something that started with a D, I thought.
Oh, it's Design Studio. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, Design Studio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing that the Salesforce side, at least Tyler and myself on the CPQ team have received was that the Word document with screenshots, which is kind of, what we were taking to kind of architect the flow of the demo. But any specific rule sets, I haven't seen.
Okay.
So with that said, we're happy to go through and kind of show a little bit of the product relations, how we're setting up these rules. Again, there are many different ways to do it. I think if there's a specific ask around, hey, we have a rule that does X, Y, Z, we can talk to that. But I think you might also realize some of the rules that we do show might, present a different way to do things in a more streamlined manner. But, this demo's for you. So where do you think we should go from here as far as kind of what you want to see?
Why don't you walk us through what you can show us, and then we can show you a little bit of what we might need to if it doesn't answer the questions, if we have time at the end.
That sounds fair. So let's hop into the back end. And where we're going to start and probably spend a good chunk of this admin session is on the product record itself. A lot of these rules are driven on the product record. And so here you can see, here's that product that we just went through the configuration of, the skid steer. And if we look at this top section right here, the general section, this is just about like what a Salesforce product would look like out of the box, right? You have your name, your code, your active checkbox, your family. As we continue to scroll down, here's our description. These product characteristics, these are fields that we made for this demo. But the reason I want to point these out is some of these fields over here, like the horsepower, the operating weight, these were actually some of our questions within guided selling. And so essentially guided selling could start to look back at the product record to help us with that filtering process when we were trying to find that product. But as we get past the description, everything that we see below this is going to now start to be fields and functionality that has been extended onto the product record as part of the CPQ package. So I'm not going to go through each and every field, but I'll point out some of the ones that I find to be some of the major players in the space. So let's just go. So in the product information, this is kind of just some high level settings. So an example might be, is the quantity editable of this product? That's simply just a checkbox. And if it is, if it is or isn't, what should the quantity be to default? Right, that's just a number field there. I always like to point out this hidden checkbox. What that means is that if this is checked, this product will not show up on a customer-facing document. So, right, if we're talking things like bill of materials, or as we start to get into some maybe more complex configurations, we might not need to show each and every component on the quote to the customer, so we can hide certain items as well. Let's move on into the pricing section. Well, what we can see here is, I mean, as it says, this is how we're going to price this product. Let me hit edit actually, so we can start to see some of these fields in action. All right. So, here in the pricing section, you can see that we can determine if this product is priced at the list and then discounted, or if it's priced at the cost and then marked up. We can even start to do like tier-based block pricing, where if you fall within a certain range, that's the price you pay. We saw a pretty brief example of what your document looks like. It was more of like a pricing block. It looked like you guys priced at the list, but you show cost information as well. Do you guys have any situations where you might price at the cost and then apply a markup to that? Well, we have the ability to do that if you do that. And then we could even leave that editable as well. Like you guys saw, I could have flipped it on the fly of my quote if I wanted to price at the cost. You'll see here, here's a field for discount schedule. That's what we saw was on those safety type products. So we'll show what one of those schedules looks like in a minute, but basically I could take that schedule and then attach it to products. And what that allows us to do is actually use one schedule across many products if we want. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. But again, here's a checkbox to say if this product can be discounted or not, right? So we saw something like the trailer that we were going to design. I was not able to discount that. So if we looked at that product record, that checkbox would be checked. We could even start to do things like leave the price or leave the cost editable to the sales rep. So let's say, or I'd say the sales rep, you could actually do that as profile based as well. So let's take that example of that trailer again. You know, if we're truly designing it from scratch, we might have to actually then type in what the cost and what the price of it was. Maybe the engineer comes in and does that. Well, in that case, we could have left these checked, and then when the engineer comes in to the quote, they could actually type in what the price and what the cost was as well. But as we move into the configuration section, this is how we tell the system that this product has other products associated to it. So if you remember when I selected the skid steer, I went straight into the configuration of it. And the reason for that is because we said it's always required that I configure this product. And so some other choices there are going to be allowed or disabled. Disabled, let's start with disabled. What that would mean would be that it is a package of products, but there's no choices to make about it. So I always give the example of, let's say you go to Home Depot and you buy an 8-piece toolkit. Well, I don't think Home Depot would be thrilled if you started switching in and out what came in that toolkit. So it comes as it is, right? I buy this toolkit, it comes with these 8 other things. That's kind of the idea of a disabled configuration. And allowed would be the idea that you could configure it if you want, right? Maybe we have this thing that we sell the same way 95% of the time, but there are some choices we can make about it if we have to. Well, what we can do is basically pre-configure that solution. And when I select it, I would actually go straight to the pricing page. But then if I needed to make any changes, I could from there still.
Is this all making sense so far? I want to make sure that we're tracking. I know it's a long meeting, so yeah.
Well, this is good. I'd like to also see the. You might get there, but like how you actually program to ask the question.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we're getting there. I know these fields. It's just kind of setting up what's about to happen next. We just want to show you that we've set up one product, and then everything kind of launches from that point. So I promise you, I'm almost done here.
So you are going to show your rule set to us then.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
So just the last thing I'll show you here is that somebody asked about images, and here's how we put this image right on the product record itself, and then as we go through and we configure it and we quote it, we pull this image through the whole process so we can help our sales reps see what they're selecting. The idea there, guys, right, we're not trying to train you right now. I just want the point to be there is that there's a lot of fields here. There's a lot of functionality here. But as you saw, a vast majority of them are going to be checkboxes or pick lists. So pretty easy to manage the way these products behave. But what we're going to do now is show how we actually built out the relationship between those products, or what I'm going to call a bundle in this case. And so you can see I'm still on that same product record, the skid steer. But if we look at the related list now, you'll see I have my features and I have my options. If I look at my features, you're going to see that these are those high-level categories that live within configuration, right? So I have if we look at the list here, it's exactly how we went through the configuration. Actually, first I selected my cabin, then I selected my tires, my bucket, etc. Again, this is just those groupings. But what you could see is that we could already start to put some pretty basic rules on that feature level. So for example, with my tire options, you'll see that we have a min and a max of 1. And so in that case, if you remember, I had that radio button there for the tires. So the system is smart enough to not allow me to choose more than 1. But in fact, if I tried to choose 0, it would have stopped me and said, no, you have to select some tire. And so there's kind of our very first example of some rules. But let's go back to this. And so there's all of our features. Now, if we look at our options, same idea, right? This is exactly what we just looked at in configuration, just more of a list format. But here's all of my cabin options. Oh, excuse me. The options are going to be the actual choices that we were making. But as you can see, here's all my cabin options. Here's all my tires, et cetera, et cetera. Now let me click into
build all these lists, right, in the tool,
exactly.
Right?
And so the way it works, exactly. Yep. And so the way it works is that I'll get into these other fields in a second. Let's just focus on these blue ones over here. Here's my configured SKU, which is the skid steer, right? That's the product, the parent product, if you will. Below that is the optional SKU. It's the cab enclosure, the child in this relationship. And then below that is the feature, cabin options, which we just looked at. Now, the way this works is that if I open up this cab enclosure in a new window, this is just going to be another product record, right? Just the same exact like we just looked at, right? And so what that means to us is that the way you would go about doing this is you would create your products. Any of those products that have features, you would create those features. But then using this product option record, we're just relating products to other products. And why that benefits us is, this cab enclosure, it's the same cab enclosure that works on all 4 of our skid steers, and how we might even put it in some of our excavators and what other machines we have, right? Now, we don't need to go create that cab enclosure product for each one of those different machines. We can simply now just relate it to as many machines as it's a part of. So this cab enclosure is actually related to all 4 skid steers. Does that make sense?
How do you make that relation? I didn't catch that.
This page that we're looking at right here. So this is essentially, this product option is essentially like a junction between 2 product records. And the way it works is I have my...
You picked it.
Yeah,
this is Charlie. Sorry, I was just going to add that, what's being shown here is configuring all this stuff through the UI, but since these are all records in the Salesforce database at the end of the day, we pretty frequently, especially if there's, complex setups and lots of products, do this through data loads. And it sounds like there's already been some efforts on your part to put these into files that determine what goes with what. I think there's a solid chance that we could take those files and with some manipulation, load them into the system to get this all set up with less pointing and clicking that needs to be done, which would help speed things up and simplify things somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily recommend, manually building out each one of these. You could if you want, but that's a great point, is that because this is Salesforce and because these are all records within Salesforce, you could absolutely do a data load project as well.
So how do you build dependent options here? So if you've got this option, then I've got other options that depend on choosing this one.
Yep. So great question. And so the way we would do that, there's actually 2 ways we can do that. One way would be, let's say this cab enclosure also had items underneath it, right? So just like the skid steer had features and options, we could have the cab enclosure have features and options as well. And now we start to create levels of configuration. So I start at a skid steer, then I pick my cab enclosure. And when I pick my cab enclosure within configuration, then I can configure that as well. And that could hold some of those additional options. Or the other way we would do that is with, similar to how we showed you with the buckets, on how, I selected it, in that case, I selected an attribute and it showed me what buckets I could pick. We can do that on our product level as well. Where let's say within configuration, I pick the cab enclosure, then it shows me what else is related to that cab enclosure. And I can actually show you what one of those rules looks like as well. So let me do that. But first, as I'm pulling this up, I know this is a different demo org, but I just want to show you visually what that looks like. And so, right, we don't really need to worry about what these products are. But in this case, I'm within the configuration of this SaaS suite here. But if I come down to my services section and pick this professional services project, you'll notice that I have that wrench there. And what that wrench means is that there's additional choices to make about this project. So I click that wrench, and now you'll see I'm in the configuration of the project. And here's all of the pieces that I can pick that are involved in the project as well. If we look on the back end, yeah.
Can I interject for just a second? What you're showing is not dependent options. What you're showing is basically kind of tunnel, right? So it's, okay, I've chosen this option, now let me go configure that option. But what we're asking is, if we've chosen something, let's say there was a whole list of options, but because we chose something, that list of options got shorter, right? Yeah. Some of those options, because of one option we chose, some of those options that we chose, those additional options that we chose, fell off the list. It's not a tunnel. Like I don't have to choose one of those in order to keep configuring down deeper and deeper. No, they're all in the same level. They're all in the same line. Yep. But maybe because I chose this, this print engine, I can't choose this cable, right? It's not necessarily, I don't want to have to dig in and configure the print engine at that point. That's not the point. That's not the point.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you. I just wanted to kind of give you two flavors that we've seen that. But I guess like the way with like the funneling or option like I just showed, right? That would be like if there are accessories that are specific to that specific choice. But I do understand what you're saying, so let me show you that as well. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you're talking about, right? So let's say I look at my add-on section right now in this org. You'll see that I have 4 choices here in my add-on section. Now, if I click this, actually, hold on, let me do something real quick down here. There we go. So I have 4 choices in my add-ons. Now, if I decide to include this reporting license as part of this configuration, let's watch what happens. The system does a quick check, and it just actually revealed to me an additional add-on that I can include. And I can only include it because I have reporting licenses on this quote, right? If I deselect reporting licenses, you're going to notice that my add-on section goes back down to 4 choices only. Is that closer in line to what you were asking about?
That is. Now, how do you program it?
Yep.
I guess the other thing that I would say is, when you show those reporting options, that's dependent on selecting one of those, directly dependent on one of those top options. What if the options within the reporting options were also dependent on another choice, not directly its parent? That makes sense? That's
fine. Yeah, these rules can go through levels as well. So let's say I pick something on like the skid steer level, and that's going to affect what options are available inside of the report exporting tools, right? That's absolutely fine. These can go through levels. Here. Let me just find the right rule here. You can see we have a lot of rules in this org. Here we go. All right, so this is the rule that we just saw with the reporting licenses and the report exporting tools. The only reason I'm showing you this in this org is because this is more closely in line to what you were asking about. We do have rules in the other org that I can show you, but I think this one's going to hit home the most. So here's kind of the header of the rule, as I call it. And so it's just kind of holding the name, telling you exactly what this rule does. And then basically the other thing that we'll look at here is the type of rule that this is. So this is what we call a product rule. There's actually 4 different ways that we could run this rule. In this case, it's a selection rule. And what that means is that the system's actually doing selection for us, right? It's either it's gonna check a box or uncheck a box. That also includes things like show or hide the product. And you'll see there's a couple of different choices there as well. Validation is more of exactly like it sounds, right? It's going to see all my, when I click save, it's going to check all my work. And if I broke any of the conditions, it will tell me and not let me move on. An alert is the same as a validation, just not a hard and fast rule. It will show me the same error message as a validation, but I would have the choice to skip it. And a filter we can talk about in a minute here. But okay, so that's kind of the high level setting up the rule. This is what you guys were hoping to see, is how does the rule work, right? And so let's start with the condition. First, you're going to set up a condition for this rule. And if we click into it, what this rule is saying is that it's testing a variable. And I'll show you a variable in just a second here. But at a high level, the condition is saying if this variable is greater than 0, then to run this rule. Before I show you the variable, I just want you to know that it could test fields as well. So let's say we have like a quote level field that we need to drive certain things in configuration. If we have like a quote level field that we want to drive certain things in configuration, we can do that. Now what a variable is going to do, and I'll open this up to show you guys, is that based on the parameters that we set, like maybe it's going to look for a specific product code or kind of whatever else you could think of here, a family or whatever else, then it can go out and say sum up the quantity of it or count the quantity of it or look for the min or the max or the average, kind of some things that you might think of like Excel in that case, right? I want to sum up this column or something like that. What this variable is doing is just going out and grabbing that information, right? It's not actually like acting or anything. So this is simply going out and going to count how many reporting licenses are in my configuration. Now, and so that's exactly what this condition is saying, right? It's checking this variable, which is just holding a number. And if that number is greater than 0, we want to run this rule. Now, if we go back to my rule, here's what this rule is going to do when it's executed. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to show and add report exporting tools. So I'll go ahead and click into that. You'll see that it's related to that product, report exporting tools. That's the one that we saw. It was either being revealed or hidden from us. So it's simply just related to this rule in that sense. But you'll see that here's a list of all those different actions that a selection rule can make. It could add or remove, which would simply just mean like checking or unchecking the box. It can enable or disable, which means it would basically turn on or off the ability to check that box. Essentially, it would gray it out or not. Combinations of those two things, and then we get into show and hide, and then combinations of those as well. And so in this case, it showed and added, which means not only did it put it on the screen for us, but it actually checked the box for us as well. You know, making my job as a sales rep that much easier. I don't even have to really think about upsells. It already happened for me.
Just a quick interjection. It's 12:48. You got until 12:55, and then I have to terminate the conference. I've got another call at 1, and when I drop, everybody drops.
Oh man, you have that power. Well, with that being said, I know there's only a few minutes left. So, anything specifically, you know, in the last couple minutes that we can touch on here? Feel free after the fact, of course, to ask questions between, myself and Tyler, and as well as the Relation Edge folks. They have extensive experience with the platform as well. But what else can we help answer in the few minutes we have remaining?
Yeah, I'd actually like to know what you guys think about that rule. The last part about the rule, sorry to wrap this up real quick, is that then we attach it to one of those parent level products. So if it's a product specific rule, because you could run these rules on a quote level as well. But so you can see here that now this rule is also associated to the SaaS suite. That's how it knows, when I'm configuring the SaaS suite to run this rule. But the other thing I wanted to show you is that we also have these fields here for child bundle and parent bundle. And that's just telling this rule to look up and down the chain just much like you asked about what if this affects something like 2 levels deeper. That's exactly what those fields are used for. But first, would love to get feedback around the way you think the rules are built. They're extremely flexible. You could add whatever fields you want to those conditions and those actions. But yeah, just want to get some feedback there, and then maybe on a more general level.
Well, I think as long as it's highly configurable, and it's kind of hard to tell by looking at that one, but as long as we have lots of flexibility to make it look and move the way we want, I think it looks great.
Yeah, and you absolutely do. You saw from the beginning, we span many different industries across manufacturing, high tech, healthcare, you name it. So naturally, each customer is going to kind of want their own personal touch on the solution. And, that's really where, a team that Relation Edge comes into play, right? Is they'll work with you to determine the way that you want it to flow, the way you want it to look. So you're exactly right with that.
One of the things that we do currently, we're working right in the live data in Sightline, and we do a lot of SQL expressions to pull data directly from there to build lists, to reference part numbers, pricing.
Yep.
How can we accommodate that in Salesforce CPQ?
To accommodate what exactly? Just building lists?
Well,
are you talking like?
Yeah, we call them dynamic option lists. So if we wanted to display a list of parts or whatever it might be, we can create a SQL expression that filters what that list is or creates that list.
Yeah.
Can we do something like that?
Yeah,
Instead of having a list right in.
You're saying like within a specific configuration, is that what you're talking about, right? Like,
yeah.
Let's say, for example, that bucket, right? And I just want to see a list of all the buckets in the system, for example, right?
Right.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm trying to think if I have an example to show you today. I just with the timing, maybe I'll come back to that. But we absolutely have that concept.
Yeah, just a generic answer. Yeah, you can do that. Is good for now, but you don't need to show.
I could show you how it's set up on the back end. I just can't necessarily show you it in the demo yet. But there is a field here somewhere. Oh, yeah, right here, option selected method. You'll see that we have click, which is what we showed you today. I had to click the checkbox, right, and selecting it. With this dynamic type of feature, what I can do there is that what I would do then is I would make a list of, like, say, within this feature, which is a dynamic feature, I want to show all the products that have a product family of license. And then that's exactly what would happen. I wouldn't necessarily need to go create each record individually. It would just pull in all the products that have that family. Short answer is yes, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 minutes
Mike,
left.
Rachel, John, what I'd like to do is set up some time for you, Mike, to meet with Charlie from the Relation Edge team to dig a little bit deeper, to show off some of the stuff that you've put together in your data studio, for him to have a look at it, for you to have a little bit more technical conversation. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that sounds good.
Do you want to do
John,
that, like, you want to keep...
John, that would be great, and I think we need to make sure that we include our label quotation person who wrote the rule set, Robert Grogan, myself, and probably Mark Snedecourt. So I think that would be good, so that all of us, we all have different areas where they were difficult or a focus, and I think it would be really good if we could get some detailed time to walk through it. Because if it can do what we have today, I've seen some things that would be, if we got all of that net neutral, then we've got some things here that are net positive.
Yeah. You said it was Grogan, you, Sendacor, Mike, and who else?
Probably John. John, no, you don't want to be involved in that. Okay, that'll be us.
I trust y'all.
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah. So that it would be the stuff.
Yeah, and the Salesforce team's happy to join that, whatever conversations as well. We have extensive resources here to help with all of that. But I agree. I think the Relation Edge team understanding, the work that you've done as far as rule sets and whatnot would be important. But I know we're at 11:55. We'll jump on up, but thanks so much, everyone. Great.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.